Thank you for staying with us. Time now for the news review as we dig into the papers and beyond. We'll be joined by Liz Hayfran-Assari, Deputy Commissioner at the RTI Commission. Liz, a very good morning to you. I see she's unmuted. I can hear her, but very faintly. We'll work on that technical glitch and get back shortly. But I have a stack of papers: Daily Graphic, Ghanaian Times, Business Finder, Daily Guide, the Daily Statesman. Let's start finding out what they have to share with us this morning. Of course, that very topical matter, reform international financial structure, President to the UN. He was speaking, of course, at the UN General Assembly, and he had some interesting comments to make. We also know that there is that South African entity that now is being buoyed with support from African countries when it comes to having our own credit rating agencies. Of course, it has its limitations, but it would stand in the gap and prevent what some African countries have described as unfairness in the global economic infrastructure, and how our credit ratings are determined by the groups we already know: Fitch, Standard & Poor's, and of course, Moody's. So we'll be getting into that story. There's also Protect Nations Peace, that's according to a UN representative. Then, section of Obechabi-Lamte Road closes today. But the banner headline today on the front page of the Daily Graphic: Fight against Galamsey, halt culture of impunity. Jinapo rallies national support. I have so many things running through my mind on the back of this. I'll be getting into that story. But let's start from page 16. And this is what it has to say. Reform international financial structure. Now, our President, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, has reiterated the urgent need for the international financial structure to be reformed to meet the needs of developing and emerging economies. Quote, he said, "The necessity for reform of the system is compelling." He argued, saying the current structure was skewed significantly against developing and emerging economies such as Ghana's. He added that the avenues open to wonderful, powerful nations to enable them to take measures that would ease pressures on their economies were closed to small nations. He further said the structure, from its prejudiced tags, denied Africa access to cheaper borrowing and pushed the continent into deeper debt. But specifically on the credit ratings issue, this is what he had to say. Quoting him again, "To make matters worse, credit rating agencies have been quick to downgrade economies in Africa, making it harder to service our debts. The tag of Africa as an investment risk is little more than, in substance, a self-fulfilling prophecy created by the prejudice of the international money market, which denies us access to cheaper borrowing, pushing us deeper into debt." So my quick take before I bring in Liz is that, yes, it's a side and side, half and half issue. African economies, most of them have had their own issues when it comes to mismanagement. And that is clear. I mean, all the way from 2018, 2019, thereabouts, Pierre Laporte of the World Bank. The World Bank had been telling us about how we're inching closer to that precipice, economic precipice. But then, of course, COVID-19, the Russo-Ukrainian war, and now Vladimir Putin is bringing in the reservists, about 300,000 of them. He is conscripting, ordinary citizens of fighting age. In fact, listening to the BBC, there are tales of some prisoners who have found their way into Ukraine and all of that. So that is not ending anytime soon. But these are problems that, adding to our own localized ones, created a mess for us. But this is the thinking of Mr. President. African countries are pushing for it. I think it's a good thing, but it doesn't necessarily mean we should totally decouple ourselves from the other agencies. It will give some balance, I think. Liz, if you can hear me now. Yes. Great. I can also hear you. Let's start with our first story. Our president, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, has been speaking at the UN, at the General Assembly to be specific, and he talks about, the unfair economic situation globally between the global north and the global south, where we find ourselves, and the habit of credit ratings agencies to give us a raw deal. What is your take on his reaction?
Well, I listened to the president yesterday, and I was thinking, if we think that we're going to get ourselves out of the rut and we are still depending on the Western world, who says they want to see us out of the rut? If we know what we want to do and we go for it, why don't we look into Africa and see if we can get our investors within Africa? Why must we always be going cap in hand to ask for people to come and invest in our continent. And if we do that all the time, definitely they have an upper hand because they have the monies, they have the funds, they decide where they want to invest. Talking to a colleague yesterday, he said to me that the UN has to catch up with the Rwandan government. And when I asked him what he meant, he says that Rwanda has decided the way they want to go and they're working towards it. And they're waiting for nobody. If Rwanda can do it, why can't the rest of Africa do it? So I believe that we need to look inside and see how best we can work our way out of the rut that we have dug ourselves into. If you definitely are talking about depending on the West, they are looking at developing their own continents and their own countries. We should do same. And even though we work together, even though we would partner each other, because they need some of our raw materials, we need their investments. But if we do not sit at a negotiating table and negotiate to the extent where we see ourselves as partners and not being the downtrodden and always going cap in hand to beg for them to come and help us out, we won't go anywhere.
We're not going anywhere. Let me just tie in, and I know I'm going to another paper, but I'll come back to the Daily Graphic. The middle spread of the Ghanaian Times newspaper also captures that story, pages 16 and 17. And it says, quoting the president, "The financial markets have been set up and operate on rules designed for the benefit of rich and powerful nations. And during times of crisis, the facade of international cooperation under which they purport to operate disappears. These are the savage lessons that we've had to take in as the world emerged from the grip of COVID-19 to energy and food price hikes and a worldwide rise in the cost of living. The necessity for reform of the system is compelling." So he talks, Liz, about this reform of the system, which, yes, I believe must happen. This is the fourth time that Mr. President is making this call. But when he talks about the savage lessons that we've had to take in, it gives me food for thought. Have we learned the lessons when it comes to overspending, not cutting our coat according to our cloth, being tied to the apron strings of the Bretton Woods institutions, like we're seeing one more time? We're heading to the IMF for a 17th package and all of that. I ask myself, these savage lessons Mr. President speaks of, have we learned them? What do you think, Liz?
I don't think we've learned any lessons. Because we just keep going around in a vicious circle and thinking that each time we stretch our hands, it will be filled. And that is what we should be working against. We should be looking at getting whatever we are investing from ourselves. And like you said, our overspending is killing us. So let's cut our coat according to our cloth. Let's see how austere we can be to make sure that we develop as a country. If we don't do that and we keep spending thinking that that is the way to go and that when we go asking for money, we'll always get it, we won't be going anywhere. Again, what are the savage lessons that we have learned? Because I believe that if you learn a lesson, you won't want to fall foul of whatever lesson you have learned, because if it is savage, then it hits you hard. And if it hits you hard, you don't want to go there again. So if we have learned the lessons, then let's go by the lessons that we have learned.
Let me go to page 3. In fact, start from the front page of the paper before I double back to page 17. Fight against Galamsey, halt culture of impunity. Jinapor replies or rallies national support. Now, the Minister of Lands and Natural Resources, Samuel Abu Jinapor, has called for collective national action involving all stakeholders to end the culture of impunity associated with illegal mining in the country. He said, although the government had implemented numerous interventions to help fight Galamsey over the past 6 years, current results were not satisfactory because of the complex nature of the menace. Responding to a question on whether the verdict he had given meant that Galamsey, the fight against Galamsey was a failure, he said the government had done, quote, tremendous work in containing the menace, but that there was more work to be done to root it out. And he adds, finally, let me just sneak this in. I do not want us to be looking at this whole matter to do with Galamsey from the angle of its being a failure or a success. dealing with illegal mining, regulating it and turning it into a responsible industry that contributes to our national economy and the life of our country is a process. It cannot be an event. It cannot be achieved overnight. It will require systematic, sustained effort and action over a period of time. You know what this reminds me of, Liz? When I think speaking to the GBC, I believe, he made mention of something similar, that it's going to take some 4, 5 to 10 years, to win or gain some sufficient ground against Galamsey. But I ask myself, within that period of time, 4 years, 5 years, 10 years, would there be anything left after the Galamsey menace as we see it and the way it is ravaging our water bodies? Look, it's so shameful because even the Ivory Coast is now calling us out and saying, deal with your problem because your waters are polluting our waters. It's destroying our cocoa farms and all of that. And it's been said, and I reiterate, we could I wouldn't say very soon, but get to the point where we have to import water. What would it take? I don't know. I am just, right now, I really don't know where the fight against Galamsey is going. I don't know whether you have maybe a more optimistic posture.
No, I don't. I don't think I have a more optimistic posture. I keep saying that we sit and wait, and then when it hits us hard, and then we start to react. It is said that a stitch in time saves 9. We have had Galamsey for how long? And what have we really done to fight Galamsey? I sometimes think that when we are ruthless, we get better results. But no one wants to be ruthless because they know who are involved. And if we don't deal with those who are involved, it's not those who are out there mining who are the big guns behind Galamsey. It's those who are able to afford the machines and give it to the small guys who go and do the mining, who risk their lives. And so if we know who they are, we are sitting and we keep saying that we are fighting Galamsey by going to the site and seizing excavators and burning them and so on and so forth. Who says that those who are behind can't afford new excavators and give to the same people? And if we do not go beyond and educate the people to know that they're destroying the environment, the same environment which belongs to them, that will be for the future, for their children, for their children's children, then we won't be going anywhere. You look at the environment and you are so, I don't even know what word to use. I was excited when I used to cover for Ghanaian Times Ashanti Gold. And they started the reclamation of the lands, and you could see that they had planted palm and all kinds of things. And we have gone beyond that now and destroyed everything. Even the reclaimed lands have been destroyed. And we sit and we pay lip service, and we continue to pay lip service. If we are not ruthless and do not deal with the people who are involved in Galamsey, we are not going anywhere.
And, I wholly agree with you when you talk about ruthlessness. That is what I believe has been left out, and that is why a lot of people will talk about political will being absent. And I can understand, in a way, why the administration in and out has not been so ruthless. You know why? Because their own people, the political elements are there. Some of the chiefs are in there. There are community leaders in there. But there is no fight that can be won when you want to pick and choose between what you have to do. That's not how, countries have developed. And interestingly, just to cap off on this story, in terms of resources we've pumped into this venture list, it would interest you that as of this point, I always find it interesting when, government institutions, MMDAs, you ask them, how much have we spent on this? How much have we spent on that? And they're not able to say it. So asked how much the country had spent so far on the fight against illegal mining, the minister said millions of Ghana cedis had been pumped into fighting the menace. And quoting him, "I will not have the exact amount for you, but millions have been spent over the period of the fight from Operation Vanguard, Operation Halt 1, Operation Halt 2, and all the various interventions we have made to tackle Galamsey." So we can't tell how much we've spent on the fight.
I was doing some research to look into whether South Africa and Tanzania suffer from Galamsey, illegal mining.
South Africa has its own, they have their own situation there.
Exactly. But you see, it hasn't got to the point where the country thinks that everything is being messed up. And when you talk about water being life, then you realize that we really are not fighting because all our waters have been polluted. It is going to cost us more to be able to clear those waters to make them potable. And that's why you're talking about importing water. So it has an effect even wider than just the environment. And it has an effect on all of us who depend on those sources of water for drinking and other household matters. So it is something that will affect us far and wide, but we are doing absolutely nothing about it. We are paying a lot of lip service, and if we do not nip it now and start to clear our waters, then I don't know where we are headed.
Only God knows, and we wish the sector minister, Mr. Janapo, Godspeed on that journey. But let's wrap with the Daily Graphic on the story. Abandoned moves to make Ghana card sole document for voter registration, NDC to EC. It makes for interesting reading, so let's just get into it. The NDC has called on the Electoral Commission to abandon its newly proposed constitutional instrument that it said sought to make the Ghana card the sole document for voter registration. Quote, since the CI has not formally been laid before Parliament, we take this opportunity to call upon the EC to abandon the idea altogether. We wish to serve notice that we will use every lawful means to resist this latest effort to undermine the right of the Ghanaians to vote and in the process skew the electoral system in favor of the new patriotic party. Finally, in light of the above, we demand an immediate cessation of all work on the laying of the CI in Parliament, pending thorough deliberations and consultations with all relevant stakeholders to fine-tune it to take on board the concerns expressed by us and others that may be held by other stakeholders. Are we in a rush with this CI, especially as people have pointed out, not every Ghanaian who qualifies to vote has the Ghana card. Some through a fault of their own, others through no fault of their own. When you don't have a foolproof system, how do you start running the system even before it's ready? Your take.
Let me go to talking to a watchman that I saw passing in front of my house, and he was whistling away and feeling very happy. So I said, oh, in this Ghana where we are suffering, why is he so happy? He says, oh, those who want to suffer will suffer. So I asked him, what do you mean? And he says that, oh, he was just talking to a friend who had complained that he had gone to queue for so long for a Ghana card and that he needed it for his bank account. And I said, don't you need one for your bank account? He said, no, he doesn't have a bank account. And I'm like, so if you have to vote and you have to use the Ghana card, what will you do? He says he won't vote. And so I was thinking to myself, how many of these kinds of people do we have who think that the system is putting too much pressure on them and they won't be bothered with the system's pressure? So he will live his life as simple as he wants to live it. He won't have a bank account. He won't do anything that he needs a Ghana card for. And then you begin to think that when we in the cities sit and take decisions without really consulting and having everybody as a stakeholder, where are we headed? Because we need every Ghanaian to be comfortable in the nation of Ghana and belong. And so we need to think through, and I think that most of the times that's what I see that we don't do. We don't think through our policies. We don't think through to the extent that you're considering that everybody in this nation is a stakeholder in that policy. And so it favors some and it doesn't favor some. I think that if you ask me, I also think that it is a rush because a lot of people, even in the cities, don't have their IDs. And when you go, they say there's a system failure, the cards are insufficient, we don't have enough cards, we have to get cards. And people are also going through because they think that they need it to do their business, they are paying for it. And apparently I heard that you were not supposed to pay anything to get a Ghana card. But you hear so many people say, I had to pay 250 cedis to get a Ghana card. And then the question is, so the 250 cedis, who is it going to and what is it being used for? So we ourselves are not cut out to doing things the right way and doing things properly. I said to a lot of people, and I try to encourage people when they were going around, it doesn't matter how long you have to go and wait, get your card. And so you realize that those who did not take advantage of that are the ones who are struggling now to get a Ghana card. And then to think that it has to be linked to your SIM card, so you need a phone and everything. And interestingly, the watchman says that the only person who calls him is his boss, the one he waits for. and the person knows how to get to him. That everybody else that he deals with is just around him. So he is living in kind of like a shell that he has created for himself, and he doesn't think that the rest of us really matter. It is his life that he's living. How many people are we going to push to be like this watchman? You know, so we need to think of everybody when we are coming up with our policies, and we need to think of everybody when we are promulgating instruments and laws that will affect all of us.
Interesting thoughts you shared there, and it's a very curious situation with this watchman. But let's get into other stories very quickly. Ghanaian Times, it talks about reforming the international financial system, as we've already touched on, and that's according to our president. 13 banks promise You Start program 5 billion Ghana cedis. And then there's Bank of Ghana clamps down on illegal forex operators, 76 arrested. That's also pertinent. Police exhume body of student nurse murdered in Mankasim. That's a very heart-wrenching situation that we've had. Since yesterday, we've been telling you about that story and how malicious people can be. I mean, how can you... Anyway, let's get to the economic stories, starting with the one on page 10. And 13 banks have promised the You Start program 5 billion Ghana cedis. That is according to the Ghana Association of Banks, which has offered to provide a total of 5 billion Ghana cedis to support the program. The finance minister, Mr. Ken Oforiatta, who disclosed this during the signing of agreements with the participating financial institutions of the You Start program in Accra on Tuesday, said the government would provide 3 billion Ghana cedis, while development partners provided 2 billion Ghana cedis to support the implementation of the 10 billion Ghana cedi program meant to support the youth to create their own businesses. So when you look at the breakdown, it would mean that government is providing 3 billion, development partners 2 billion, the banks 5 billion Ghana cedis. You know about the You Start program and what it seeks to achieve. We're pumping, at least for now, some 10 billion Ghana cedis. You could say that is the equivalent of what? 1 billion American dollars into this program. Yet another such policy. How are you holding your breath on this one?
Yes, I am. But again, when I think about it, we are trying to encourage the youth to be entrepreneurial, and that is a very good thing. But what is there to say that they all want to go into the same kind of business? I want to see them being more or less groomed and guided into what to do, because otherwise we would have so many businesses that are doing the same thing, so competing amongst themselves, and there will be other areas that will be short because there's nobody willing to go into that kind of business. So it's not just about giving them money, it's about making sure that when they start their enterprises, we can grow those enterprises. And again, when they start their enterprises, and I keep saying that I see a lot of competition, which is good, but you see again a lot of small scale industries that are competing amongst themselves. And when you think that when they come together, they probably will be able to build a bigger industry that would serve us as a people well. So are we trying to ensure that even as they start their enterprises, as time goes by, they can come together and probably have an industry that will compete not only amongst themselves in Ghana, but probably in the sub-region and later in the whole of Africa. If you're not looking beyond that, and we are just looking at the startup for them now, then I don't know what the future would hold for them.
And of course, the other story there, Bank of Ghana clamps down on illegal forex operators. 76 of them have been arrested. We're talking in simple terms about the black market. And
yes, it will be interesting to know how long they have been operating for.
They have been operating for donkey years. I know that. Exactly. When you go to certain places here in Accra, and you know, I keep saying that usually I refrain from mentioning the name of the police station. There is a police station right here in the heart of Accra. And these people operate right behind the wall of the police station, the Ghana Police Service. That has always, it's something that I've actually found curious. I actually spoke to a policeman in that, police station once and told him, do you guys not see these people? Do you not know that their work is illegal? And he said, well, it's not, how we go do them? That's what he told me. So I find it interesting now that all of a sudden we seem to have realized that it is really affecting our currency, and they actually tend to be drivers of inflation. But anyway, of the currency.
The policeman's son could be in there, his brother could be in there, his
Right.
nephew could be in there, because they weren't there to sit right behind the wall if they didn't know anybody in the police station, I'm sure. And I'm sure if the police were asked to swoop, they'll give them a hint that we've been asked to come down on you, so you people had better not come tomorrow. So that is the way we go. And again, I always say that it boils down to political will, ruthlessness, dealing with it, nipping it in the bud. We wait for it to fester. And when it does, and people get used to using that and finding that it's a better and a faster way of changing their monies or getting more money for their dollars, they definitely would not go to your licensed bureaus to change their money, because they probably will get 1-2 CDs more than what you get in the bureau. And that is fast business for everybody.
Let's wrap with this story, and we'll call it a review. The Daily Statesman reports stories that we've already digested, but at least it says, boss, no imminent shortage of petroleum products, and 6 teachers arrested for examination malpractice. The Daily Guide as well already reflects stories that we've looked at, the one to do with the pastor and the chief, killing a student nurse, and 9 dead in fresh Boku clash. But let's look at this one. Imf Bounces Mohammed. The story is on page 3. And the IMF has once again dismissed ex-President John Dramani Mohammed's politicized claim, according to the paper. The Ghana's current economic challenges are a result of the bad policies of the Akufo-Addo-led government. Now it says, but the politically opportunistic claim, which is intended to put government in a bad light, was watered down when the IMF again cleared the government of the politicized accusations by Mr. Mahama. It talks about the fund's director of communications, Gary Rice, who says former President Mahama's blame seems wrong-headed, insisting that his boss was right when she indicated that the current Ghanaian economic situation is not a result of bad economic policies. Now, his boss spoke to me and made mention of this. But what is interesting, what many people have found interesting, is how an Article 4 delivery of the same IMF, before Ghana reached out for the IMF package, they were singing a very different tune. So to the ordinary Ghanaian, many people are asking, is the IMF leading us on the right path? What is your take as a citizen?
I think we should go Rwanda's way. We should let the IMF and everybody else be catching up with us. It's heartwarming to hear somebody say, and that person works with the UN, and he says that the UN has to catch up with the Rwandan government. I don't expect the IMF to sing any other tune. After all, they're working with us. Sometimes I try to...
You're lost for words, huh?
And I try to be careful so I don't really step on toes. But you see, I believe that the IMF have their work cut out for them. And having their work cut out for them, if singing a tune that will please us is what will get them going, then they will sing a tune that will please us. But we need to, as a people, open our eyes. Not only government. I think that government listens to all these partners, but they should pay more attention to what the people are saying also.
Right.
Because we are the ones who are probably either going to benefit or going to suffer as a result of whatever decisions they're making. And so I believe that when we speak, government should listen also. The IMF would want to play down criticisms of the government, but then we ourselves, when we vet the policies, what do we make of the policies?
Right.
Are those the kinds of policies that will get out of the dire situation that we are in,
Right.
with or without the IMF support? And I would want us to look more at what we can get internally, because always when we look out, then when it comes in, it says when you don't work hard for some monies, you spend it frivolously. And so if we are working hard and what we are earning is what we are putting into this economy, I'm sure we'll be more prudent with our spending than just getting and then expecting others to help us pay back what we have collected. So the taxpayer is always suffering. The taxpayer always has to pay more taxes because we are always borrowing and we have to pay with some interest. If the IMF funds are free, then you probably will be thinking that, well, when these funds come in, whatever they use it for, it doesn't bother me. But it must bother us because whatever they invest the money in should be able to get the monies to pay back what has been collected.
Definitely not free. But thank you so much for sharing your time with us this morning, Liz Heyfran-Asare, Deputy Chairperson at the RTI Commission. And right before we get into sports, right before we segue into sports, happy birthday to Al-Hassan Abdullahi. May Allah never forsake you whenever you are in need. Continue to be a wonderful brother. It's from your young brother or your younger brother, Muftau Nabila Abdullahi. And he's serving you sports.